What if you had evidence of a serial killer? DNA, murder weapons, confessions on tape, but nobody would listen. What if you called law enforcement, the FBI, and begged officials to take action, but ultimately you're ignored? That is the situation that Galina Trefil says she's been facing for years. In the next set of posts, she lays out her attempts to bring her father, Dr. John Trefil, to justice, her frustrations with law enforcement, and even claims that he has admitted to being a serial killer on tape, but no one will act. If you go to my playlist, you can hear John discussing these murders on tape. Today, we're going to go through her next posts, exactly as she wrote them. As always, I will be giving commentary, fact-checking, and analysis as we go. My name is Galina, legal name Maria. My father is a serial killer. People have repeatedly told me I need to get in contact with the FBI. Well, I did. I contacted them repeatedly in 2017 and 2023. The original agent that I interacted with was Christopher Taylor, who never did actually come to meet with me face-to-face or look at any evidence. I was told by someone in the Mendocino County DA's office that Agent Sebastian Stanley, Santa Rosa FBI office, is working on the case. Agent Stanley has never been willing to speak so much as a word to me, though there was a time when I was calling several times a week, trying to get through to him and leaving messages. I tried to turn over the murder weapon to both of them, or anyone in law enforcement. No one will take it. Most recently, I begged someone at Sonoma County Sheriff's Department to take it. I even offered to bring it to them. His exact words were, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, slow down." No, I won't slow down anymore. It's been almost a decade of me asking for help. Yes, I can prove that I have been asking and trying to do the right thing. And to any law enforcement reading this, I assure you, I am not posting this to shame anyone. The bigger picture then is still the bigger picture now. The victims' families need closure, and that won't happen until this is investigated properly. My father won't live forever. Please take the murder weapon and analyze John's DNA. That is all I ask. So as we know, I've already covered, and these are all coming out live all at the same time, these posts. We do know that they claim to have uploaded John's DNA into CODIS and they haven't gotten any matches. But this is extremely frustrating and perplexing. If she has a murder weapon, one that could link John to unsolved murders, why is no one taking it? It's difficult to believe that every single agency is refusing to check it, but we can fact check because she does provide emails. She does mention specific agents by names, which means there must be a longer paper trail of some kind. Now, we don't know what was fully said in these conversations or why they refused to take the weapon, but one possibility is they simply don't believe her. If law enforcement thought John was truly a serial killer, would they really ignore a murder weapon? Or is this a case of someone in power not wanting this investigation to happen? Post number 7. Discussing this information is very difficult for me. I have no problem owning that a lot of the time I'm not good at it, not nearly as articulate as perhaps others might be. I see that some people have brought up story inconsistencies, such as my father's name being spelled 2 ways. To clarify, John, Jon, is his legal name, but he really hated that spelling. He never legally changed it, but he only ever wrote himself down as John, John. If I spelled it Jon around him, it would have irritated him significantly and probably started a fight. I'm making an effort to use the legal spelling, but old habits die hard. As for other inconsistencies, this information is spanning a 50-year time frame. I can understand how, given out of order, things may appear inconsistent when they are not. If there are particular things people want cleared up, please drop it in the comment section, and I will try to get to them. I thank you for your patience. I'm being sent so many private messages, questions, comments, and friend requests from strangers. It's hard for me to process. I am autistic, so socializing is far from my strong suit. Violence is furthermore difficult for all survivors to speak about. I look forward to the day when I can just go back to being a wallflower soccer mom and not have to talk about all these things. I feel like this is an important post because it does acknowledge inconsistencies before people are trying to use them against her. It also reminds us she is autistic, very high functioning clearly, but that can explain why her posts sometimes feel disorganized or why the details will shift slightly. And at the same time, inconsistencies in a case like this matter. Even small discrepancies can be used to discredit a story. So the more she clarifies now, in my opinion, the better. Post number 8. At the Bohemian National Cemetery in Chicago, Illinois, I was 14 years old. The tombstone belongs to Carol Mestic Charles, Joanna Rezek Mestic, Jeannie, and Stanislava Stanley Trefil. I certainly have no idea at the time that this image was taken, but my father murdered all three of these people. They are my great-grandparents and grandfather. There's another photo of this gravestone with John Trefil wearing his cap and gown the day he graduated from medical school. After the picture was taken, he laughed to me years later. He urinated on all three of their graves. I know they will never have justice. My grandfather was already dying from cancer on his own hospital bed when my teenage father poisoned him. My great-grandparents were both elderly when he poisoned them. Autopsies weren't done to look for foul play, so none of them will ever have justice. Still, though, my great-grandparents are part of the reason I am fighting. That claim is especially disturbing because it suggests John's crime started with his own family, and it would fit with the patterns of many serial killers who begin their crimes in childhood or adolescence. But the issue is, without an autopsy, these claims can't be proven. No one can go back and test for poison now. And without physical evidence, all we have is Galina's word. Galina's next two posts are a full breakdown of her father's alleged confessions. She claims he murdered one person a month from 1965 to 1999 across multiple states and even internationally. She also claims law enforcement has dozens of hours of John confessing in detail. He wants to take police to the burial sites, but they won't go, according to her. She has murder weapons, including poison, that she still has a bottle of that he kept, apparently. If this is all on tape, as she's saying, then what is law enforcement doing? This is just a huge question that I will keep asking throughout this entire series. I understand that they've released a statement, but that really isn't good enough. If there truly are victims, there are a lot of things that can be done, including looking into old cases. Not every case will have DNA, just like the Richard Allen case in the Delphi murders of Abby and Libby. You're not always going to have DNA. The brutal murder in the Idaho 4, there was no DNA left at that scene other than touch DNA on a knife sheath. So is it impossible that his DNA doesn't match anybody in CODIS? I don't think so. Post number 11. My name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer, and I need your help. I start my posts out with something to this effect generally because of a line that I read once from Mr. Rogers about how in disaster situations, one should look for the helpers. People like my father epitomize what terrible things a human being is capable of, but by no means are they what defines humanity. I have always firmly believed that people as a whole are good and decent. I knew that if I asked for help online, the community would come. They would want to do what needs to be done because of basic human goodness. One thing that's important to note here is Galina's framing of her story. She isn't just saying, hey, my father's a murderer. She's actively trying to rally people to help her, and she's putting a lot of faith in the power of community. Does this mean she's being honest? Not necessarily. This kind of emotional appeal could be a tactic to get more engagement, or it could be truly raw desperation of someone who has spent years being ignored. Let's continue. I'd like to point out now, as there have been so many people asking what they can do to help, that there are many people that already have helped without even knowing it. I moved back to the Mendocino coast approximately 2 years ago. By that point, I'd gone to law enforcement about 20 times, and thus far, nothing had happened. The psychological strain was breaking me. So I walked into Project Sanctuary and asked for help. It was incredibly intimidating to tell a perfect stranger in the waiting room there that not only was my father a serial killer, but no one in a position of power was willing to bring him to justice. Over the next year and a half, Project Sanctuary put so much effort into giving me aid. Over time, while I was visiting my father and coaxing murder information out of him, I was given 3 different counselors to help me cope. I will always be grateful for the advice that they gave me. Half of my father's diaries were scanned by the first counselor. With her, I walked some of my father's crime scenes. The second counselor always stressed self-care to me. She'd ask me things like, did I have tea today? Did I paint? On the walk to Project Sanctuary from my home, did I look for flowers and my favorite color? The third counselor really stressed to me that I needed to focus on who I was beyond being the daughter of a serial killer. What future did I want? What steps did I have to take to ensure that future actually happened? So this for me was a critical part of the things that Galina was saying, because it shows me she wasn't just sitting back and watching things unfold or waiting for somebody to do something. She was actively documenting what her father said, involving others, walking crime scenes, and working with professionals. But here's a question. If she walked these locations with a counselor, why didn't law enforcement come and be involved at that time? I would hope that they were notified to come out to the crime scenes as well. I know that they said that they did go look at some and they couldn't find remnants of any bodies or anything like that. But I've seen a lot of comments from people on Galina's posts and even here on YouTube who discuss Mendocino County and some others as being very lackadaisical. They don't dig deep into these things, and I don't know if that's a lack of staffing or too much crime, or they're simply not interested and they don't find this valuable. My name is Galina, and I am the daughter of a serial killer. This is post number 12. As only small towns can provide, there are rumors going around now in Fort Bragg, California. One of them is that I did not reach out to law enforcement, that I'm lying about that. Well, I keep records. I may not be able to find them all easily. I can't find my interaction with the female officer from FBPD, who I first spoke to in 2020 or 2021. She was amazing, very thoughtful. I sent her a tape of my father discussing dozens of murders. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if that particular tape fell under Mendocino jurisdiction or not. Regardless, that female officer said that she wanted to drive to Reno to speak with me in person as long as her boss would approve the funds. And then I never heard from her again. This is important because people are calling her a liar. I would say, just looking at the comments on Facebook and on here and TikTok, it's about 50-50. 50% believe it, 50% don't. But then, she says she keeps records and some are lost, and she sent a tape of our father discussing the murders, but where's that tape now? We don't know. And the female officer wanted to meet with her, but then disappeared. So if law enforcement did listen to the tapes, Why wasn't more done then? Galina is either exposing one of the biggest ignored serial killers in history, or she's part of some type of social experiment here, or a story that is spiraling out of control. Post number 13, the Zodiac claim. My name is Galina. I am the daughter of a serial killer. Yes, it is John's claim that he is both the Zodiac Killer and the Santa Rosa hitchhiker killer. He doesn't tend to focus on these particular cases when he speaks, rather the ones in which the victims died, though they were not necessarily from inside the boundaries of Mendocino County. Yes, my parents have a verifiable link to two people involved in the case, Melvin Belly and Herb Kane. In the late 1970s, John Trefil worked as a psychiatrist and was briefly the assistant chief psychiatrist of San Quentin State Prison. While there, staff became suspicious that he had contributed to the death of an inmate. He was not fired for their suspicions, but for a much more mundane reason. My father, very outraged and debating murdering his former boss, Warden George Sumner, contacted attorney Melvin Belly, asking him to represent him in a lawsuit against San Quentin. Belly is referenced repeatedly in my father's diaries. John prided himself on the fact that he had terrible handwriting. He always laughed when people struggled to read it. And he enjoyed their irritation, particularly when he would deliberately misspell or mispronounce things, like names. Even my mother's name he deliberately misspelled on a regular basis. As his daughter, obviously, I can read my father's handwriting. I'm going to include some excerpts from his diary which are typed out firsthand and then followed by a scan of the original documents. Post number 14. Questions about my relationship with my ex, Aaron Channel, have been repeatedly posted. I don't want to talk about this very much because it has nothing to do with my father's case. Aaron is one of those individuals that my father intended to murder back when he was only a 15-year-old boy. It didn't happen, but my father warning me that Aaron was going to be found stabbed to death in a ditch probably happened 50 times during the 5 years that we on and off dated. I don't deny that I am the daughter of a pedophile, that at 20 years old I married a man accused of killing a pedophile. I didn't think that Aaron did it. He told me that he didn't for 17 years. I'd known him since we were in grammar school. I believed him and I stood by him when he did his time. Now I'm baffled by the concept that my father's claims of being a serial killer should be ignored because Aaron Channel killed a pedophile. As there are people aggressively claiming that the man who died was not a pedophile, I attach below the video that Aaron filmed about his case 4 years ago, wherein actual pages from the police report are posted, which detail his victim's atrocious and disgusting pedophilia. The last two things that I'll add about Aaron's case is that it was utterly shameful on the part of Mendocino County media that the man's pedophilia was either not reported or was outright lied about. Shame on them. This community had the right to know the truth. Furthermore, it's mind-boggling that there were no efforts to identify the child rape victims in the photographs belonging to that man. Who knows what happened to those kids? They deserved justice. And by just destroying those pictures without trying to find out who they were, law enforcement ensured that they never had it. As people dismissing her story due to her relationship with Aaron, it's important to point out that she isn't defending his actions. She's explaining her perspective, how long she knew him and what she believed at the time, and she also stresses his case is unrelated to her father's, And that's something I see a lot here on YouTube, is we'll find out something about a story that is unrelated to the actual story and then try to negate the things the person said based off something unrelated to the actual case. She draws attention to what she views as failures in the justice system and the media coverage, namely the lack of the investigation into the photos found with the victims in Aaron's case. And according to Galina, there was documented evidence of child sexual abuse that was never followed up on. And of course, that's another major allegation, and if true, a missed opportunity for justice for those people. It's worth noting how she frames the public perception of her. People seem to be using her association with Aaron to question her credibility overall, and she's pushing back against that hard in her posts. And what this shows us is how complicated and emotional this case is, not just because of her allegations, but because of the tangled personal relationships and the history surrounding them. And right now, whether you believe Galina or not, it's clear she's been forced to defend herself from multiple angles, both for what she says happened and for the people she's known in her life. Post number 15. My name is Galina. I am the daughter of a serial killer. Whenever questioning my father about his murders, I always strove to retrieve information which may result in a victim being identified, either by finding a body or learning a specific detail that police may be able to work with. Overall, John did not like that. He liked to speak about how he murdered. He truly disliked seeing the victims as people rather than objects. Physical descriptions were few and far between. Only a few were actually identified by him by name. One of the ones that had no name I call Valkyrie Doe, and this is her story. Valkyrie was a hitchhiker that John picked up, the last one. It was either 99 or 2000 when John convinced her to get into his white Silverado truck with rust spots. Valkyrie was supposedly in her early 20s with long braids. Her hair was blonde. She was standing outside a restaurant in Fort Bragg, California. He began to drive south with her. It was John's intention to hold her hostage in his subterranean tomb for some time before killing her. Somewhere between Fort Bragg and Albion, Valkyrie realized John was a predator, and she fought back hard. She fought so hard, in fact, that she actually hurt him. He refuses to say how, but she injured him so badly he realized that she had to be the last young woman that he picked up. At that point, John was 60 years old, so not as strong as he once was. Valkyrie almost got away. He killed her with his bare hands and disposed of her body before going home. In the grotesque sadness of this case, Valkyrie's bravery and strength must be remembered. The last thing that she did on this earth was beat down a serial killer so badly that other young girls, other hitchhikers, were not picked up by him. She lost her life, but she saved the lives of others. John refuses to say where her body is. This is one of the roughest so far. It reads like the final chapter in a long history of violence, and yet we don't have any way to verify the existence of Valkyrie. No real name, no body, no missing person to match. But what stands out is she says that Valkyrie's fight changed something, that she physically injured John so severely he didn't hunt again. If that's true, her resistance might have marked the end of his ability or his will to kill. And what struck me too was that even though Galina believes this woman is lost to time, she gives her a name, Valkyrie Doe, a name of strength in battle, but also Doe, someone who is not identified, which makes it sad. It's Galina's way of humanizing her even when her father wouldn't. If you're watching this and you're from Fort Bragg or the Albion area, especially in the late 1990s or early 2000s, and you recall a missing woman who fits blonde, long braids, 20s, who went missing, maybe last seen near a restaurant, this could be a thread worth pulling on. I mean, it's a long shot, but this case has been full of long shots. Post number 16. This question keeps coming up. Yes, I'm a writer. I'm hypergraphic autistic. I can't socialize well. I'm not a very good speaker. I often stutter. My expression has always come through writing. I was what my teachers called a child prodigy. I wrote my first novel when I was 13 years old. Probably a lot of people that I went to school with will remember that I was writing books as a teenager. That's what I've always wanted to do with my life. I don't hide it or apologize for it. I've been published in 2 languages and in publications from USA, India, and Hungary. I've received a couple of crappy awards. I've been in somewhere between 50 and 100 anthologies. I've stopped counting. Before I knew what my father was, I'd published a book on slavery in Eastern Europe. I've had a lot more books that I wanted to publish, but they are effectively now collecting dust because everything in my life got put on hold to catch a serial killer. Frankly, all that I wanted to do was hide after I found out what he was. I didn't want people to read my books, look at them, and guess about my background in child abuse, because it shows. Obviously, if you know who my father is and what he did, pain that I went through from my abuse comes out in my writing, even if my books are fiction. That's why my slavery book is no longer available. That's why, despite being ordained, I also don't pursue employment as a rabbi. The case matters more than anything. My dream is that law enforcement says to me one day, "Ma'am, step back. We'll take it from here." Then I hope I can go back to writing, probably under a pen name, the things that I want to do. I can pursue the personal dreams, which I have put to the side. FYI, to the non-writers out there, being a writer is like being an artist. The pay is lousy. Seriously, Safeway checkers make more money by far than your average writer. The true crime genre doesn't pay squat. I have 100 writer friends, and none of them have gotten rich yet. That's not why I'm pursuing justice against my father. I'm doing it because he was repeatedly investigated by a number of different agencies starting all the way back in 1962. None of them have been able to catch him so far. I'm trying to do my part, which I am morally bound to do, to ensure they have what they need to catch him, and I won't stop until they do. It's worth saying. This is a woman who has, for better or worse, dropped everything in her life, her writing, her identity as a rabbi, her privacy, to chase the truth that she believes is the truth about her own father. And I don't know that that's something you do unless you feel you don't have a choice. And she knows that people are questioning her motives, and she's aware of how writing and storytelling can be scrutinized. But whether you believe every claim or are skeptical, it is undeniable that she spent over a decade documenting her father's alleged crimes and trying to get law enforcement to do something. If you've made it this far in the series, you have to understand this is not a simple mystery. It's personal and painful, and it's ongoing. I've created a dedicated playlist on YouTube here called Galina Trefil, where you can follow this investigation post by post with full transparency from Galina, we hope, and my commentary as we go. There's no clickbait. I'm not editing her words. It's just an honest look at one of the wildest stories I've seen surface in a very long time. So in the next one, we're going to dive more into her claims, including scanned diary entries from her father, what law enforcement is saying. So I guess I will see you in the next one. I've got a lot to go catch up on because she has posted a lot here this week. See you soon.